right, I'm excited for this one. This is the third version of moderating AI panels for this event. I think, in Singapore times, everybody was excited trying to figure out what's going on. Then in Bangkok, we were starting to get there. I think now we have enough information that we can start figuring out not just the concept, but maybe like some of the paths. So I'd like to get everyone's thoughts slowly, but please, let's start with some intros.
Hi, everybody. My name's Eric Nakagawa, co-founder and CEO of Self, a ZK Identity Protocol. And the interest here, I think, is for bringing the human side to a lot of the AI work that everybody's doing. So I'm going to advocate for that. Formerly executive director at Celo blockchain.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. My name is Renç. I'm the CEO of Giza. At Giza, we create intelligent autonomous markets. We very much focus on the AI side, but with a humanitarian approach, and quite excited for this panel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm product manager at Valory, building the suite of baby degen agents, which I didn't mention earlier, but Optimus is a baby degen agent. These are autonomous, co-owned AI DeFi agents that work on your behalf to manage your assets with your direction. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Guy, the AI leader at Taraxa, and also the CEO of TrendMoon. We basically are an AI social data platform that aggregates and focuses on Telegram data to understand where the sentiment, mindshare, and around Telegram data to feed that to the users.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marijo Radman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alterscope. We're building a permissionless platform for creation, management, deployment of autonomous risk agents. In essence, we want to make DeFi, risk-taking, and other agents more adaptive in the DeFi space by taking the risks on a deeper level into account.
Awesome. I'm Jordi. I do a few different things, host a podcast, different things, but I'm representing MantleX specifically. So Mantle is a very DeFi-focused chain. MantleX is our kind of AI arm, really looking to collaborate with people like yourselves and make better products, because ultimately all that matters is that we make something useful and it's not just a buzzword, but we actually get somewhere. And this is very much what we're going to discuss together today, is how do we get there. I think we want something that is secure, adds value, and sustainable. We've seen a lot of things in crypto, Luna, all this stuff. It promises free money, doesn't turn out very well. I think, if crypto is mostly around DeFi, and insofar as we're here trying to figure out how we're going to bring AI into the space, then DeFi is by far the most important topic. And I chose this panel specifically because I wanted to discuss with you guys this intersection, not just the initial hype around it, but what have we learned and where do we go from here? Who wants to kind of think about what we've learned so far? Like, have you any of you guys tried something that failed and kind of realized that's not the direction people want? I've heard, for example, there's this aspect of having more of a co-pilot where people are still doing their research and they just have like AI, like LLMs, give them ideas, versus are the LLMs actually the interacting tool? I think that hasn't picked up so much, right? Like people are not interacting with LLMs and telling them, do this activity. They're just using them for research. What have you guys found?
Maybe to start, because we at Alterscope started with due diligence. In essence, it's all about that. And the thing is, like, we are in a space which is very speculation-driven, and very few of the folks who are interacting with DeFi actually understand DeFi, care actually about the risks, security in general, and so on. So the audience is actually not really ready for something like that. In a first sense, the one who actually care about that are professional, very, very professional investors who do due diligence before they are doing anything in the crypto space, and they want to know everything. But those guys at the moment are not really aggressively deploying into DeFi. They are more trading. they are learning and trading. So it's more of a lagging coming into space. So if we want to get research actually into the space around protocols, we have to think more in a different way. Basically, make this research available data actionable to execute something on behalf of those users who don't care. In essence, we have all the interest that we reduce the amount of losses in the space to grow and grow the pie, and then with that, actually, we as projects also succeed.
I will zoom out a little bit. One thing I have learned is that we need a better name. Like the DeFi, like nobody knows how to pronounce it. So, like I'm a fan of XenoFi because we have the Xenocognitive Finance motto. So maybe like rebranding is a good idea for people to pronounce it. The other one I think is like the humanitarian part of this. Like I think this is the most important part. One thing that I have learned in my life is that when you're in a relationship, the best way to make that relationship as productive as possible is you let the other party who's better at doing something do that thing. And it is the same thing in your love life. If you have a wife or a husband or a boyfriend, if they're good at something, if my wife is good at something, I'm not going there. You know, like I'll let her do that thing, and she does let me do my thing. And it's the same in business, right? If you have a great team of engineers, you don't try to code it yourself. If you have a front-end engineer, the back-end engineer doesn't do that. And from a humanitarian perspective, I think there is a fundamental mismatch between humans and financial markets. Because humans, we are terrible at being profitable. We are emotional, we need sleep, markets run 24/7, and we don't. So the best way to make that relationship productive is to put humans at a place where they're great at, which is like orchestration and intent, and make that as easy as possible, and let the other party, which is like intelligent agents that we have, take care of the execution part. And there, the ZK, the verifiability, the security, all of those things play a really, really important role. But the idea is like, how do we get real users? Is that we're not going to get the next billion users to come and use the DeFi products as they are. Like there's like this 15-step journey that David has outlined many times, we have outlined many times. The moment you decide to deploy capital and the moment you actually deploy capital to DeFi, there's like weeks and days and months in between where you feel safe about it. So how do you minimize that time? How do you increase the capital velocity in a secure and trustworthy way? To me, like this is the most important problem if you want to scale to like the next billion users and if you want to bring like the next $1 trillion. So this is what I have learned, and this is, I think, the most important problem to solve if you want to scale to get real users.
Okay.
I just off that point, I think it's, so we're talking about an intersection, right? DeFi and AI. What's implicit in an intersection is that it's two different things, right? And so you're discussing briefly, comparative advantage in a marriage, but there's also, this comparative advantage at the intersection of DeFi and AI, whereby DeFi has shown itself to be an incredibly efficient settlement layer, an incredibly efficient incentive layer, a layer by which financial markets can exist and can do so in a distributed, low-friction manner, right? So if everyone knew how to use it and everyone knew how to use it perfectly, that would be great. But I mean, what's not working, to your question? We can start with DeFi in a sense because it has a usability problem, right? So the promise of DeFi was that it's this great tech that will break down jurisdictional barriers, allow people to access financial services, get on chain, transact peer-to-peer. But what we've found is that now we have all of the ability. And so in my chart earlier, now there's like 69 different categories, insurance, lending, of course, but like derivatives, synthetics, and yet only a fraction are actually proficient, are actually credible users of that tech. And so the intersection of DeFi, ideally, is smoothing over the part of DeFi that doesn't work, because it's not DeFi that doesn't work, it's the people that use DeFi that can't use it. And that's the comparative advantage of AI, so that it can determine these differences, this matrix of options or possibilities, and allocate to the one that makes sense for that user. And that's the critical part, because if the one that makes sense, like that could just be an optimizer, but it needs to be optimal for a given individual. And that's the huge power.
So you think that like it's not just trying to take what's already working in DeFi and making it more 24/7 automated. You think there's completely things that are not even working in DeFi that we need to fix?
I would say DeFi, the tech, it works, but it's for anything to change from one state to another, it requires action, right? It requires explicit action, and up until very recently, this action is always done by a human. But if that human is not informed, as Renç mentioned, if they're not awake, these markets don't sleep. And initially, this was an exciting and empowering thing. But I mean, anyone who is around for a long time has found that you can burn yourself out in these markets, and you do. So there's a solution there.
It's definitely true. I remember last cycle, I was seeing people, borrow against their Ethereum on chain. They had certain liquidation prices. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Like, I can't go to sleep. And even if the price is like far away, like I go to sleep, price is 3,000, and then my liquidation is at 2,000. It just like makes me very uneasy because the crypto, things can wick down 50%, and you wake up, your collateral is gone. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Now, if you have an agent that's reliable, it's tested, and in that situation, it'll move some capital from somewhere else and save you, then maybe you can unlock some of that power. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just had on the topics here, we're getting really abstract, but I actually think I just want to push a button. Like, I don't want to do everything you just said. It's too hard. It's stressful. I think a lot of the world, a lot of the people that haven't even come on board, a lot of the people that we're, the Celo network's trying to bring on are like, their balance is under $1,000, right? They want it to go up, so they're going to speculate and buy some token. But if they had a little button that just worked, I think a lot of people would push it. I think a lot of people that, like a lot of normal people, would just push a button if they knew something was safe or could kind of. I think what you said here was if you could customize it towards my goals, and I could just kind of Ron Popeil, no one here is old enough to know what that is, but set it and forget it. I think that's what AI should be doing. But here I am typing like prompt. I'm using a prompt generator to then prompt another thing, and then I forgot to do some work. I think we're getting now to the point where things can start to get automated, but that to me is really broken, and I think the idea of simplifying it is always going to be the goal.
Definitely, we have two completely different types of users. We have, some power users that, let's admit it, I mean, they control a lot of TVL on chain. Like, there's a few whales that just have a lot of it. And then, like you said, most normal users, they just want an easy button. Put it in Anchor, get their 10% or 20%, whatever it was. That gets a lot of people using it. I think we can cater to both, right? And they're completely different.
But there is a point, like, we have to take in account with what we are here dealing. First off, like, there is a famous saying from Hemingway, like, how do you lose money? So it starts slowly and then suddenly. And the thing is, like, when we look the core of DeFi, the source of the yield for all these automation protocols, they are not that strong. So those are manually set up parameters, manually set up markets, very, very often inefficient defined markets, and then on top of that we're building automation. So basically we have something which is on the fundamentals not solved, and then on top of that we are building some kind of automation scripts. This is like a precursor for possible disaster. Of course, we are now dealing with retailers. They are putting small amount of bugs. No one sees, nothing's happening. But if we want to get a real adoption, and real adoption on DeFi means actually enough liquidity that the markets are stable and working, this has to be changed. We have to get in a different level of those yield sources which are coming from somewhere, and they have to be managed in a way that we don't have insolvencies and that we understand the liquidity pools and exposure, actually. This is more important than anything else, that we understand if we are getting some kind of yield in a specific liquidity pool, that this has a direct impact on Aave, direct impact on some other ecosystem, because one guy has different positions across the space and he can actually capture you without knowing what's going on.
This is a really good point. Like, the ecosystemic part of this is a really good point. And But very much the idea is that if everybody has an agent and if all the capital is managed by agents, the agents are like ruthless entities. You know, they are not like emotional and they understand risk better than anyone. So the idea is that you scale the intelligence into the whole DeFi sector, and the agents will reward those that are less risky, those are faster, ecosystems that have low latency, low gas costs. So the idea is that you use intelligence as an instrument to dominate the market's discipline. You embark some market discipline on DeFi through intelligence that we, as humans, obviously, like I think DeFi can use some discipline, and we're not able to like enforce it. So the agents also play a role there. So they don't just manage your capital, but the idea is that they manage the whole ecosystem. Like they manage a market, and I think to me, like that's at least that's the vision we have, and that's where we want to go to.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this is actually, and that point there is how I became interested in agents. Actually, it's because we're arriving at designs that are sufficiently nuanced such that they are more efficient than anything out there, but they are not capital efficient because it's a liquidity problem. And this is the DeFi usability problem, right? Like there are designs and protocol designs or at the mechanics level that deserve a place in DeFi because they are more efficient, marginally so, but they don't grow because the users don't know A, that they exist, or B, how to allocate, right? I mean, sizing becomes a problem with capital efficiency and all that. But to your point is that like that there are two large groups of users. Like the front door should be the easy button. The front door should be, this will make you money, and then you press the button and it does make you money. But that doesn't exclude or preclude the ability for then that a user, well, it turns out that they're actually very informed, to be able to express just a general goal, and then if it is a good agent, what it will do is it says, oh, you're not the person I thought you are. Like, okay, let's have this conversation. And it's as little or as much of an involvement from the user as they want, but the default state should be that the user is hardly involved. In fact, they could leave for 6 months and they look back and they realize that this has actually been making money for them the entire time.
I mean, so far we've had either the version where the agent prepares the transaction, so you tell it, okay, I want to buy this thing, and it doesn't actually execute it, doesn't have your key, it just prepares it, you still click confirm, you can see what it's found, and it just makes it a little bit easier. That hasn't been super popular yet. I think people are not finding that super useful. And then on the other hand, of course, we have the vaults, for example, where within certain more defined parameters, there's only certain things that can be done. There's some guardrails. It's not like things can just withdraw your balance and send it somewhere else. It can only, has a few options on what it can do. That's maybe the direction that would allow kind of what you're describing as, leave it for 6 months because it's only allowed to do a few things. It can only move it between the Aave one and the Morpho one, or a few parameters that you set it. Obviously, we start to expand that space. I know you've been working on this, thinking about this a lot. Curious to get your thoughts, but ultimately, I guess one question is, how is this different than a normal vault? Like, what is an agentic vault versus like some vault that still has some preset rules? You sell it, you just tell it, pre-program it in a certain way. Where do we draw the line between like a deterministic and an agentic strategy or vault? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's turning it inside out, right? So instead of having rules-based order of operations and models on the outside, what happens if you bring the model to the core, right? Like, what happens if you put the model right in the center of that thing? What you have then is something that it's a system, right? So it's self-organizing, it's self-referential, it responds to changes, and it records data. It records data, which is the crucial part because that means it can learn, right? It can change its future behavior based on what happened previously. And so if you take a model and you put it at the center, not only can you do different things going forward based on what you've learned, but as a user, if you're informed, you can say, I actually know that I want this. And then you can have a unique experience that is tailored to yourself. And that's very powerful.
Yeah, like we are having some like agentic product conversations, which is great. There's like two parts that we were talking about. There's like the chat interfaces versus like intuitive interfaces that we discussed. And now there's like vaults and like what is agent. So in the first part, which is like chat interfaces and intuitive interfaces, I think the reason why chat interfaces doesn't work for finance is because nobody feels comfortable typing out their financial intents, you know, like, and so it's like you type like say instead of sui and you end up somewhere completely different, or you have to go to like additional layers of security, which is like an additional click, and all of those things, it doesn't make sense. Like there's a reason why nobody has ever sent like an SMS to their bank to move their money. You just go there and press this, and you're done. So I think that's why like the chat interfaces, even though conversational interfaces has a place in finance, I don't think it's like the instruction to execution model doesn't really work. One of the reasons why it doesn't really work is also like if you want to get real users, if you want to get more users, this model doesn't solve the complexity problem. You still serve the same type of audience who knows exactly what they want to do, how to do it, but you just automate that. Instead, we need to go for like an intent-driven model, where, as he mentioned, the user comes in and gets a very high-level intent, and then the agent is in charge of the ideation and the execution part. And I think that's where the magic happens. The second part, which is like difference between a vault and an agent, we don't have agentic vaults, we have agents. So in our infrastructure, every single person in this room gets their own agent. And you can customize your agent with your own risk parameters, with your own capital requirements, because for us, this just makes sense. Like when you go to a bank, you also have a personalized instrument. If you take a loan, you don't take a loan with the whole room. You don't have to take a loan with the whole customers. It's like very specific for you. So we believe in like personalization in finance. We believe in personalization in DeFi. And we are seeing like that adoption in Giza as well. So one of the main differences is that you don't have to put all your eggs with my eggs in the same basket. And then the strategy part is a lot more dynamic with an agent, because then it can act on the market as the market evolves, rather than like a vault, which is like a more static strategy or loop-based strategy.
So you're saying everyone has their own separate, basket, which is, programmed the same way, but ultimately the parameters might be different because each one's parameters are different. Do you see a world where we can actually get to because when you talk about the magic happens, as Michael was saying, for the modern AI, there's this magic, which is you don't exactly know how it's giving you the answer. It's doing it, and it seems to be consistently good. Right now, we can kind of understand, because it's very early on, everything that, one of your agents would be doing, we can backtrace exactly why it's doing it. At what point do you think we get to a world where there is like a magic where we don't even know why it did it? It just learned. It kind of figured out over time and, used...
Like, I don't know if finance is a good use case for like, I don't know how it happened and like it magically happened kind of thing. If it goes good,
that's the real
great.
AI. I mean, the real AI is basically...
Exactly, but at the same time, like there's also like, as we are building like a new financial instrument, we are building a new financial species, there's like also an education part that needs to go into this. I think everybody is freaking out when they hear AI agents or agents, because everybody has the assumption that all agents run on LLMs that can hallucinate, that can take your money and run away. But as other panelists discussed, like the financial execution, the financial intelligence comes from much smaller models that has been doing these things great at fintech and traditional finance that are more deterministic, as you mentioned, that we can backtrack all of those steps. And I think at this stage of adoption, at this stage of like bringing automation and intelligence to DeFi, you need this determinism. And we have been talking about like treasury management, we have been talking about institutions. And for these big players, as you mentioned, that are controlling most of the capital in DeFi, they want security, they want reliability, they want traceability, you want auditability. So like you are in the end building a financial instrument, and these are like core components of what makes a financial instrument.
I believe just to add here, I believe the core of, you have to understand that financial industry is a complex system. That basically means this complex system has his equilibrium and constantly changing. And we have agents in place. They have to have the ability to learn. So they have to understand something changed, and then in accordance to that, change the strategy to the changes which he discovered. Now, of course, this is very simple description what I put here out. What does it mean? So basically, you have to understand the whole market. You have to understand basically the biggest impact on you, which can have, and then the agent has to have his, let's say, scope in which he can act to be able to execute something on this behalf to basically save the capital or something like that. The thing is, the reality is also like if we end up in a space of agentic DeFi, this space is going to be extremely efficient, and it's going to be very hard to get alpha or some kind of additional result. It's just going to be like extremely capital efficient. In essence, we will just focus on getting sources of liquidity out for some specific use cases. So in this case, basically we in this stage of DeFi have this illiquidity problem, inefficiency problem, which can be solved. And this is actually quite good what's happening, because we saw all these meme coins, what happened just 6 months ago, how majority of people lost money, that we are finally going in this direction to get some kind of meaningful instruments of capital allocation. Nevertheless, we will end up in a situation if those systems start working in a very efficient market where it's going to be very hard to get alpha out, and then the whole thing will be on the source of the yield which executes something. Is it lending, borrowing? Is it some kind of trading? Is it some kind of more advanced financial instruments coming out of it? It's in essence going to end up like TradFi.
I couldn't disagree more, actually. Like, I think there's enough alpha for everyone. Like, traditional finance has been running on algorithms for decades. There's still enough money for everybody. Like, capital efficiency and market efficiency doesn't necessarily be like a binary decision where you maximize efficiency and you minimize alpha. Like, there's a lot of other things that comes with efficiency that can get people still better yield and better profitability. And in terms of like alpha, how many people have been profitable in the past 10 years constantly? Like, what is the alpha that you're getting now? Like, average user, what is the alpha that you're getting now? Getting rugged on like meme coins, or like losing all the round tripping your positions over and over again, losing sleep. Like, is that alpha? No, it's not alpha. Like, and there is the alpha. Like, the alpha is like, how do we maximize the two currencies of life that matter most, which is time and wealth?
I mean, thinking from first principles, yes, we discussed most users, they just want free, like they just want money. They don't want returns. That's the use case of most of crypto. They just want to put something there and then take more out. Amazing. But from first principles, you can't consistently offer that as outperformance. You can offer more efficiency, you can offer more optimization, but you can't generate alpha consistently, because by definition, the alpha will evaporate if it's just that easy to kind of provide it. So it seems to me that something like, you mentioned preferences, people mentioned their preferences. That's one obviously way to unlock utility.
Exactly.
Then there's something I'm very interested in, private data, turning private data into alpha. That is also sustainable because not everyone has the same private data. So if you can source, the actual profitable traders, and you can do a survey for them and pay them some tokens to give you, their top picks, and the AI kind of integrates all of that, maybe that's sustainable. Something like that's not.
But we have to take something in account. I believe like the first and most important element hereby is the source of the yield has to be based on fundamentals. And if you have a digital asset which is based on some kind of fundamentals, it generates some kind of, let's say, underlying base for the yield. Then we have these markets which are based on liquidity. As more liquidity comes in, the utilization factor is changing. And if you have optimized markets on top, you're basically changing. Even if you discover inefficiencies, it will be covered very fast because liquidity coming in and the interest rate is changing of the market. So in essence, you cannot not end up in an efficient market by default. Of course, there are preferences, there are risk profiles, which you can run, and I agree on that side. So basically, you can go risk-aggressive strategy, less risk-aggressive strategy, depending what your returns wants to be in the end. But those are all elements of a efficient market, what you have in place. If you have everyone running very aggressive strategies, they will end up in a very unhappy end result in the end. If everyone is going to have a safe strategy, those people who are risking, they are going to get very good results in the end. It's all about, like, it's mathematics. It's mathematics. I understand the whole case of user experience, simplifying the process, helping the end user who doesn't understand the space, and this is in essence the problem of education, what we have at the moment, to make the capital.
So let me ask a question to everybody as we kind of start to wrap up. Like, what would you like to see in the next 6 months? You know, we've had 6 months now. Looking forward to the next 6 months, what would you like to see that will unlock, you know, more users, more good kind of use cases? What do you hope to see?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the ideal use case here is something that really feels like it's a personal asset manager. You know, you go in, but you know, you talk to this agent.
Do you fill out like a survey for like 20 minutes and tell it?
No. You just start it, and then it does things. Maybe it assumes, you know, it starts in a minimally offensive a framework, and then if you want to, you have an ability to. It's elective, whereby you can say, well, actually, these are my goals, and then it's like, okay, well, I mean, what this might mean, or just say, yep, got it, okay, I'll readjust. But like ultimately, I think this whole idea of alpha, like it only is such that it erodes if we assume fixity. But we're getting closer to like a changing system, you know, where it's learning and it's adjusting its future behavior based on things that you tell it, but also things that it observes. And that is, I think, you know, where the value is. Like, we have these silos of value in these protocols, and by certain metrics of supply and demand, there's yield or whatever. Agents should be the interstitial parts between those silos of value, right? They should connect one value system to another, and there's plenty of room to do that much better and more efficiently. And that doesn't mean that it's not possible. You know, it's not like we have a fixed numerator and the denominator goes to infinity and then there's no alpha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear from everybody on
just
this.
a quick, yeah, from my perspective, I think identifying that people are real and they're using these agents, I think is great. I think everybody wants or will want one of these. Actually, I don't want one. I want like a whole team doing stuff for me. And I think that's where we need to, and then you need like variations of teams trying different things. But I would like to get to a point where all this information is coming to me. Of course, I'm gonna have to pay for it, but it should be relative to how much value I have.
So you want to be like Ken Griffin and just have a bunch of different teams
I think
of agents working?
It's already happening. I think it's like, when is it gonna come to everybody in the room? Like, everyone's gonna go home and run whatever you build, right? Like, I'm gonna try to get 40% or 30%, and then by the time I run it, it'll be 10%, right? And then by the time they run it, it'll be 5%. So to his idea around like it gets more efficient, but I think at the end of the day we should just remember, like, there's people that, you know, like aren't trying to make 50% on $1 million. It's like 50%.
So what specifically you want to see over the next 6 months?
Just remember the people side of it. You know, like the design I saw there, I thought was great. This idea of like a single button, I think we should strive to be there, but there's some people that want to, you know, see more, edit and modify everything and go for it, but most people won't ever do that. And I think out of that, there's a lot of profitable businesses that can be made. Yeah.
Guilherme, how about you?
Yeah, I think customization is really what we should be looking for in the future. I mean, I guess what you're alluding to as well. I don't agree that everybody wants the same thing. Clearly, people have more interests. Some people just want to trade meme coins. Some people want to have a low interest rate if they're trading like millions of dollars or whatever it is. And I think this variability creates different objectives. But it just needs to be easy for people to customize that. Going back to the idea of having just an interface, people you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, you don't go to a chat and ask it. If someone goes into crypto and never came, they're not going to know what Aave, Curve, or whatever this is, or even chains, right? They're not going to come into the terminal and say, oh, I want to go into Aave, then swap into Base and whatever, give me like a path of Avenue and I'll execute. No, they don't. They don't even know what these things are, right? Like, they'll come with an objective, with some kind of intent, and they expect this whatever agent that we have that is customizable to him to fulfill those 24/7, and not this too much customization. I guess like what people are used to with Cursor and stuff is not really what is going to bring new users to
yeah, we need smart abstraction, smart customization. I think they're going to kill me. Let's wrap up here. Those beeps might have been for us. So thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. Guys, if you want to stay for 10 more minutes, I have another talk.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.